Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Al24 Midnight News Edition coming to you live from the capital Algiers, and these are tonight's top stories. Algeria increases its efforts for political settlements of the crisis in Niger, and the Secretary General of the Algerian Foreign Ministry arrives in Niamey. In Tripoli, the U.S. Security Council renews its commitment to implement an inclusive political process under Libyan leadership and UN supervision. And after difficult negotiations, BRICS agrees to expand the group and invites 6 countries to join. The Chinese president describes the move as a historic movement. The Russian president confirms the death of the leader of the private Russian Wagner group in the crash of the plane on the outskirts of Moscow, and Zelensky denies his country's involvement in the accident. Hello again and welcome. First, the Algerian Foreign Ministry said in a statement that the Secretary General of the Ministry, Lounis Magraman, tasked by the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, was to visit the Republic of Niger on Thursday. The statement added that this comes as part of Algeria's tireless and ongoing efforts to contribute to peaceful solution to the crisis in this neighboring country. On the other side, Algeria and Nigeria have agreed to seize all available opportunities to find a political solution to the conflict in Niger. A statement of the Algerian Foreign Ministry indicated that Algerian Foreign Minister Mr. Ahmed Attaf and his Nigerian counterpart Youssef Mayatama Tougar agreed to continue and strengthen coordination between the two countries in order to seize all available opportunities to find a political solution in order to ensure a lasting peace and security in the country. The same source added that the two parties held lengthy consultations which centered on the crisis in Niger, its developments, and the prospects for strengthening efforts aimed at implementing a peaceful solution in a way that guarantees a return to constitutional order in the country and spares the unpredictable repercussions of any military intervention.
In this respect, we have agreed on the need to coordinate the efforts of our respective countries, in particular the initiative of the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, and his Nigerian counterpart, Bola Tinubu, in his capacity as acting chairman of ECOWAS, aimed at reinforcing regional and international momentum and encouraging everyone to adhere to the political and peaceful process to resolve the crisis in Niger.
Meanwhile, Algerian Foreign Minister Mr. Ahmed Attaf affirmed that Algeria and the leadership of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, believes strongly that a political option is still available by developing a clear vision for solution to the crisis based on rejection of unconstitutional changes, which guarantees the return to constitutional order and preserves the country's gains.
وهو الحل الذي يضمن أولاً الاحترام الكامل.
It is the solution that guarantees, first of all, full respect for the African legal framework that prevents and rejects any unconstitutional change of governments. Second of all, it's the solution that guarantees the return to constitutional order in Niger. Third of all, it is the solution that guarantees the preservation of the achievements made by Niger during the previous decades as part of strengthening the democratic foundations in that sister country. Fourth of all, it is the solution that guarantees and prevents Niger and the entire region from the repercussions of a foreign military intervention that cannot be predicted and whose consequences will be difficult to determine.
Also, Mr. Ahmed Attaf stressed that the Algerian approach vis-à-vis the crisis in Niger in an agreement and consensus with Nigeria, which allows for the implementation of the principle of African solutions to Africa's problem.
المحادثات مع الأشقاء في نيجيريا أكدت بالفعل.
Discussions with the brothers in Nigeria confirmed that these 4 criteria are subject to agreement and great consensus, likely to implement the principle of African solutions to Africa's problems in dealing with the crisis in Niger. For this, we affirmed that Algeria and Nigeria, the 2 countries that contributed historically through their active roles in instilling the values and principles of African unity, and which have a great responsibility in implementing the continental agenda for peace and stability, could but work together hand in hand to avoid escalating the crisis in Niger, in the region, and in the African continent as a whole.
In a related matter, the executive director of the Union of the African Scholars, Omar Bamba, hailed Algeria's role in settling the crisis in Niger through peaceful channels. In a statement made to Al24 News channel, Bamba described the Algerian mediation as important and balanced.
After Algeria has started these fruitful visits, we have noted that the former ECOWAS president, former Nigerian president Abubakar Ismail, has received the head of the Algerian diplomacy and discussed the efforts made by the former president with the community of ulema of Nigeria, where they have agreed on a favorable solution, thanks to Algeria that always intervenes to find solutions to crises.
To a different matter now, the Polisario Front has condemned the attempts of the Moroccan occupation to implicate foreign companies to invest in green energy in the occupied territories of Western Sahara. In a statement issued by the representative of the front in charge of Europe and European institutions, Mansour Omar, the Polisario Front described the efforts of the Moroccan occupation to settle foreign companies in the Sahrawi territories' lands as a blatant attempt as part of a colonial war lost in advance against the Sahrawi people.
The Sahrawi Arab Republic is writing to you to complain about the oppression and violation of international law from which it suffers in the 21st century, as well as the continuous plundering of its wealth with the intervention of some countries that seek to impose unfair unilateral agendas, including some members of the International Security Council, thus preventing the Sahrawi people from achieving their sovereignty over the entirety of their territory.
Also, the Sahrawi President Ibrahim Ghali affirmed what he called the shameful interference of international parties seeking to impose unjust unilateral choices with the aim of depriving the Sahrawi people of completing their sovereignty. Ghali, in a speech he delivered during the opening session of the BRICS Africa Summit held in Johannesburg Thursday, called on the international community and members of the UN Security Council to assume their responsibilities in respecting international legitimacy away from the policy of double standards in a way that preserves peace and stability in the African continent. On Thursday, the BRICS group called on 6 countries to join the bloc in an effort to expand its global influence. The South African president and the chairperson of the year's BRICS summit, Cyril Ramaphosa, announced that the 5 current member states have reached a consensus on the first phase of this expansion process and have invited 6 states to become new members of the BRICS group from January 1st, 2024.
Still firmly on the ground on the moon, we have decided to invite the Argentine Republic, the Arab Republic of Egypt, the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates to become full members of BRICS. The membership will take effect from the 1st of January 2024.
For his part, Chinese President Xi Jinping stressed that the expansion is historic, reflecting the resolution of BRICS countries to unite to cooperate with other developing countries, meeting the expectations of the international community and serves the common interests of emerging markets and developing countries.
The expansion is historic, reflecting the resolution of the BRICS countries to unite and cooperate with other developing countries, meeting the expectations of the international community, and serves the common interests of emerging markets and developing countries. The expansion also marks a new starting point for BRICS cooperation, injecting fresh vitality into the BRICS cooperation mechanism and further strengthening the forces for world peace and development. I believe as long as we pull together, a lot can be achieved in BRICS cooperation, and a promising future awaits the BRICS countries. Let us work together to write a new chapter of solidarity and cooperation among emerging markets and developing countries for development.
Also, Russian President Vladimir Putin welcomed the expansion of the bloc from next year as the club of large and populous emerging economies seeks to reshape the global order.
I would like to congratulate our new members who will start work in full format next year. I would like to assure all colleagues that we will start the work that we have started today to expand the influence of BRICS in the world. I mean the establishment of practical work with the new members of the organization.
And the Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva said that the importance of the BRICS is confirmed by growing interest in joining it, adding that his country will work during its presidency of the upcoming G20 summit to put an end to inequality in the international system, calling for the entry of African Union as a member of the G20.
Brazil will take over the chair of the G20 in December, and we want to put the reduction of inequalities at the core of the international agenda. We cannot do that without more representation from Africa, and that's why we're advocating for the entrance of the African Union as a member of the G20.
The BRICS countries have expressed their deep concern about deteriorating humanitarian situation in the occupied Palestinian territories and the escalation of violence in light of the continued illegal settlement expansion of the Zionist occupation. In the final declaration of the summit held in the South African capital, Johannesburg, the member states called on the international community to support direct negotiations based on international law, including Security Council and General Assembly resolutions, the Arab Peace Initiative towards a two-state solution, and the establishment of an independent and sovereign Palestinian state. Still in Palestine, the Zionist occupation forces arrest 36 Palestinians from separate areas of the West Bank, including freed prisoners and an injured person. The occupation forces stormed Jenin and arrest 5 Palestinians from the village of Al-Ghurfa, while they arrest dozens from the south of Nablus and 14 others from the south of Ariha, in addition to 2 freed prisoners from Al-Khalil and 4 from Talkarun. Now back to the African continent, turning our attention to the Libyan capital Tripoli. The UN Security Council is doubling down on its commitment to an all-encompassing political journey in the country. This is a process led by the Libyan itself and overseen by United Nations.
Following a thorough briefing by the head of the United Nations Support Mission in Libya, Security Council members reaffirmed their commitment to an inclusive Libyan political process in line with UN resolutions, urging swift progress and unity among the Libyan factions for the electoral agenda. The Council statement on the UN's Facebook page supports diplomatic initiatives, emphasizing a comprehensive political mechanism rooted in Libyan political agreement and the Political Dialogue Forum's roadmap. The Council recognizes positive steps through 6+6 negotiations for practical electoral rules.
The Council supports the good offices to strengthen the inclusive political process based on the Libyan political agreement, the roadmap of the Political Dialogue Forum, and the progress made in the 6+6 negotiations aimed at developing viable electoral laws.
With a view to setting the stage for the upcoming elections, the Security Council is calling on all parties to uphold the ceasefire pact and help facilitate the withdrawal of foreign forces from Libyan soil. This step is seen as crucial in ensuring a level playing field for the electoral process.
The Council calls on all parties to abide by the ceasefire agreement, including the action plan approved by the 5+5 Joint Military Committee and the withdrawal of all foreign forces, foreign fighters and mercenaries from Libya.
Shining a spotlight on comprehensive reconciliation, anchored in principles of transitional justice and accountability, the Council is wholeheartedly endorsing endeavors led by Presidency Council. Supported by the African Union, these initiatives are envisioned to bridge gaps and pave the way for a successful election. This could very well mark a turning point in Libya's journey towards overcoming its long-standing crisis.
The Presidential Council in Libya announced the start of setting up what it called a mechanism for radical solutions to prevent recurrence of the armed confrontation that took place in the capital last week. The Council stated that endeavors was discussed during a meeting in Tripoli devoted to discussing the situation in the Tripoli military region and the West Coast, bringing together the deputy in the Presidential Council, Abdullah Lafi, with the commanders from different regions. Now, entering the European continent, breaking his silence on the plane crash, Russian President Vladimir Putin expressed condolences to the families of the victims of the plane crash belonging to Wagner Group north of Moscow. Murab al-Awar in this report.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has broken his silence on the plane crash that is presumed to have killed top leaders of the Wagner mercenary group and expressed condolences to the families of those who were on board the jet.
I knew Prigozhin for a very long time, since the early 1990s. He was a man with a complicated fate, and he made serious mistakes in life. He achieved the results he needed both for himself and when I asked him for the common cause, as in these last months. He was a talented person, a talented businessman. He worked not only in our country and worked with results, but also abroad, in Africa in particular. He was involved in oil, gas, precious metals and stones there.
Russian investigators opened a criminal probe, but there has been no official statements from Moscow on what may have caused Wednesday evening's crash. Putin, however, stressed to finish the continuing investigations into the mercenary leader's jet crash.
As far as I know, it was only yesterday that he got back from Africa. He met some officials here. But what is absolutely clear, the head of the investigative committee reported to me this morning. They have already launched a preliminary investigation into this incident, and it will be carried out in full and to the end. There is no doubt about that here. Let's see what the investigators say in the near future. Tests, technical and genetic tests, are being carried out now. This takes some time.
The founder of the Wagner military company and 6 other passengers were on a private jet that crashed Wednesday soon after taking off from Moscow with a crew of 3. According to Russia's Civil Aviation Authority, rescuers found 10 bodies and Russian media cited anonymous sources in Wagner who said Prigozhin was dead, yet there has been no official confirmation.
On the other side, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky denied his country's involvement in the killing of the leader of Russian Wagner Group, Prigozhin, in his plane crash near Moscow. Zelensky, during a joint press conference with his Portuguese counterpart held in Kiev, hinted at Moscow's involvement in what he called the assassination of the head of the Russian private military group Wagner.
First of all, we had nothing to do with it. Everybody realizes who has something to do with it. You know, when Ukraine asked the countries of the world for airplanes, we did not have this in mind. We had something else in mind. We needed support, although Prigozhin's death would help.
Norway is set to become the 3rd country to donate the F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine after Norwegian Prime Minister said that his country will give the US-made warplanes to Kiev, but the details of the donation would be announced later. The announcement came as the Norwegian Prime Minister made a surprise visit to Kiev on Thursday.
Based on our dialogue, we have made a decision to donate Norwegian. In the context of air defense, we are donating a contribution of IRIS-T, which is a system that also will allow to protect infrastructure and human lives against drones and missiles. Finally, Mr. President, based on our dialogue, we have made a decision to donate Norwegian F-16 fighter jets, and we are in a discussion now about when and how.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said he sees that Germany and Japan have no chance to become permanent members in UN Security Council. The Russian top diplomat added that two countries would bring absolutely nothing new to the Security Council discussion as they obediently do Washington's bidding, just like virtually every other Western country. Former U.S. President Donald Trump is headed to Atlanta, where he is expected to surrender and then be released at the Fulton County Jail in Georgia later during the day. Trump's surrender marks the fourth time this year the former president has turned himself into local or federal officials after criminal charges were brought against him. Japan's decision to release treated water from the Fukushima nuclear power plant into the Pacific Ocean has started to have an impact on the seafood vendors who expressed their concerns from this step. This comes as China said it will suspend the import of all aquatic products, including edible aquatic animals originating from Japan.
Leo is one of many vendors at this major seafood market here in China's capital, Beijing, who are anxious about the effect the decision taken by neighboring Japan to release treated water from the Fukushima nuclear plant into the Pacific Ocean will have on their industry.
Japan is giving us such crap. How could it not have any effect on us? If it didn't, then why would they discharge it into the open sea? Can't they just keep it in their own country?
Sellers like Leo import many of the necessary ingredients from Japan. China has become the largest export destination for Japanese seafood. But given the possible environmental damage coming from the Fukushima water release, vendors here say they might look for alternatives.
In the future, we will definitely try to avoid importing these raw materials from Japan. We might consider using ingredients from Russia instead, looking for possible substitutes. We need to firmly boycott Japanese products in the future.
This video, released by Tokyo Electric Power Company, shows Japan is going on with its plan to discharge treated radioactive water. The plan has been approved by the Japanese government and the International Atomic Energy Agency, which said last month that the release meets international safety standards. However, China, which announced a ban on all seafood from Japan, has another opinion.
Since humanity began using nuclear energy for peaceful purposes, there has been neither any precedent nor universally recognized standards for discharging nuclear contaminated water into the ocean.
Public concern remains high. Japan's decision faces opposition from domestic activists and loud objections from neighboring countries.
Ladies and ladies and gentlemen, thank you ever so much for taking part with us in this late hour. For more updates, you can follow our social media platform. And all I can say at the end, take care of yourself and good night.